Hey, what is going on, guys? I hope you're having a fantastic Sunday. To all the mothers out there, happy Mother's Day. Hope you had a chance to celebrate with your wives, your spouse, your significant other, your moms. Um, we just got back from a quick trip, man. We're going to be talking about that tonight. We're going to be talking about bass. Our topic tonight is, can you have too much bass? So that should be a fun conversation. Give you some updates about Ryan's home theater, some things he's been working on as
Updates.
well.
There are some updates on the
Man, we got
Mad VR
lots
Experience
to
Center for
talk
sure.
about tonight. I know Jonathan won't be able to be with us tonight. He is celebrating Mother's Day with Megan, and they're watching a movie together, which is awesome. And I'm not sure if Rusty will be here, but if he does, he's welcome to pop on in. But we're gonna have some fun tonight, man. We always have fun, right?
We try to. What everybody perceives as fun, especially for me, may be different.
Yeah. Well, we'll give you an update on this past weekend. Had a great time there, and I think it'll weave in really nicely with even the subject tonight. So it's going to be a fun time. So before we kind of kick off and give you some updates, definitely want to give a big thanks to our sponsor, Ascend AV. If you guys are interested in any home theater upgrades for your setup, maybe some new subwoofers, maybe some amplifiers, whatever you need, speakers, Ryan will hook you up. You can reach out to him at ascendav.net. So appreciate your support, brother. And we're going to do it'll probably be, we'll still have some questions at the end of the night. So if you got questions about home theater, drop those in the chat and we'll be starring those.
It would be one of these streams without questions at the end of the night. Yeah. I do want to try and contain this to under 2 hours.
Yeah. So sometimes we get really long, 3 hours. So we're going to see if we can do a little bit better and try to.
Our partners are not happy when those happen.
What's that?
Our partners are not happy when those happen.
Yeah,
yours, Jessica doesn't care because she's asleep.
She's asleep, man.
But my wife, putting the younger kids to bed, and Jonathan, always having to clean the carpets. It's rough. It's rough.
I love it, man. So cool. We got lots of folks in the chat. I've been saying hi to you guys. Man, I appreciate your support every week, man. We have a good time. Hopefully this is not only just fun, but educational as well, helping you with your home theater journey. And but yeah, man. So let's just jump right into it. First thing I want to do, I just want to give you a quick update on MWAVE. We've got, my voice is a little hoarse because we've been talking for the straight nonstop for the past.
You were only there for 27 hours or whatever.
But we talked a lot in 24 hours.
We did.
That was a fly in, fly out. I'll give you an update on that, but I want to share this with you. MWAVE, I just posted this sometime last week. So we've got a ton of seminars and tech talks this year. These are some great communicators. Let me flip back over here. Let me go back to the tab. Here we go. So Brett Borkus is going to be doing a seminar on a case study that he's got there. All of this can be on the website. You can check it out, MidwestAVExperience.com, under the Attend tab right up here. That's where it's at right there. And then there's also a link on the main homepage. We're going to have some seminars and tech talks on projectors. Nick and Andy have always done a great job at leading the projector comparison, but they're going to give some educational stuff as well this year. Of course, we've got FOMO and Brian Meath from Brian's Tech Therapy. They're going to be doing some educational tech talks in their room on what do you look for in buying a TV. Matt Trinkline from Storm Audio. Matt's an incredible dude, super knowledgeable. He's going to be giving a talk on Dirac. And so a lot of you guys love Dirac, and maybe you're just have some extra questions and you need some more information. So he's going to be talking about how do you really dial it in? What does that look like to perform that expert calibrations? Anthony Grimani is going to be doing a panel discussion with Matthew Pose. We've also got Brett Borkus. So that's going to be a super fun conversation there on theater design. Again, the same three gentlemen, they're going to be talking about bass management. So as you can see, there is just a ton of educational value at the show. And we're even looking at possibly doing recording at least some of these. I don't think there's any way we physically could record all of them, but I'm looking into some ways that we possibly could offer that to you, um, after the fact. And you can watch that on the replay. We've got Gary Blouse. Oh, I missed it. Jeff Permanian, Matt Trinkline here, theater, audio fundamentals. Gary Blouse with Storm Audio is going to be doing theater design 101. And then Andy and Nick and also FOMO and Brian are going to do that same talk the next day. So that'll be on Sunday. We won't have any of these on Friday night just because it's a shorter night. So we want you to be able to just hang out, do some demos. And then we've got Walt Zerby from Cedia. He's going to be talking about the new RP22 with Simon Spears from OSD Audio, and some of the kind of the subjects during that one. That one's a little bit longer seminar, so hopefully they'll probably break that up into 2, and then you can kind of come and go if you need to, or you may want to stay for the whole 2 hours. And then a couple more down here on networked audio, as well as projection fundamentals with Chris Seymour and Chris Deutsch. So just a lot of content at the show. We would love for you guys to join us. Midwest AV Experience, it's unlike anything I've ever experienced in the AV space, and especially in regards to home theater. And so I think it's really going to be an amazing show. This is our 3rd year doing that, but we would love for you to consider joining us. Got all the information on the website, so you can check that out at MidwestAVExperience.com. And with that said, I'm going to show just a quick promo video for that, and a big shout out to Jake for putting this together. Check this out. 56% of home theater enthusiasts say they have never experienced a home theater other than their own. We're on a mission to change that.
One of the great things about MWAVE is that you have an opportunity to actually see this equipment in people's homes.
You hear about Dolby Atmos, you hear about bass transducers, you see things like Mad VR, but to experience it is a whole nother thing.
MWAVE is not just an AV experience, it's a pursuit to build a connected community of like-minded enthusiasts and the brands that continue to push the boundaries of the AV industry.
We've been having a blast. We've been knocking sheetrock off the ceiling and dust has fallen.
I advise everybody who's interested in home theater, come to MWAVE.
I'm telling you, you don't want to miss this.
Oh, yeah, man, it's going down. Literally, what are we, 39 days away?
Don't remind me.
Ryan gets stressed every time I say that, man.
Don't remind me.
We're ready to have a blast, man. Every year, we just try to build on the previous year, adding more educational value, more experiences. This year, we've doubled the amount of home theater experiences, the VIP home theater experiences. That's separate from the 3-day event. So if you're interested in that, man, there's just so much to do, and being able to reconnect with people that you've met last year, or maybe you've just met on the forums or on a Facebook group and you've never met them in person. This is a super event that'll allow you to really get connected and build some friendships. So let's dive on into it, man. We're going to be talking about can you have too much bass? So let's first start off with this weekend. It was a whirlwind of a trip. My daughter, youngest daughter, Rebecca, she's graduating high school this year. So at 6 o'clock, her graduation party started, and then Dad had to leave at 7 o'clock to get on a flight at 9 o'clock p.m. Got to Chicago at, I guess, about 11:30. Ryan and Scott Newby picked me up at the airport, drove back. We got home a little bit after, 1 p.m.? 1 a.m.? Something like that.
Nothing like being stuck in traffic at 1 a.m.
Yeah. And then Ryan, he's like, peace out, I'm going to bed. Scott and myself and Kat stayed up a little bit longer, so about 2, and then got up at 6 a.m. and we hit the ground running, man. Went to Dunkin', got some breakfast, came back home, helping Scott get everything set up. And we had an event Scott and Kat had this event in their home. I think there's about 62 people throughout the day. And Scott, I believe he's in the chat. So throughout the day, just various people from the community said, hey, I want to be a part of this. I believe, is this his 5th year doing this?
I couldn't tell you.
I think it's been at least 4 years. Every year it continues to grow. And he just opens it up to the community, but it's literally just a first come. It's like, look, if you say you're coming, I'll put you on the list. And usually within a week, it's completely booked. And then sometimes people drop out. But he invites everybody into his home. And let me do this. Let me share. Let's remove this. And I'll just give you a couple photos from the event. Just kind of see.
He had 62 people at the event.
Okay, that's what I thought. Perfect. See, man, I'm right on the money. Got my. All right, that is not. All right, this is what I want right here. All right, cool. I'll share my Facebook page. So here you can see. Yeah, that should be big enough. So this is Scott's living room. So he's got the RTJ. These are the sub-18s. So you can see there. I call them the Tower of Power. This is a ridiculous setup. Absolutely incredible. But you've got 4 18s. There's 8 10-inch drivers in that middle section. And then a massive, I think it's either a 21 or a 23-inch horn. There's a compression driver there. And then another, 2 18s on the bottom. So that is, I think there's a Parasound preamp over on the right in that little rack. There's a Cherry amplifier. And then there's, I'm not sure, is a Cherry running the 2 mid-range maybe? Or like the, what I'm saying? The
410s? Yes.
I think that's what he's got there.
So
and
Cherry
then
runs the 410s, and then the RTJ subs run the 4 18s.
So just a killer setup. And so sometimes, of course, we would crank it really loud. And I mean, just, oh my gosh, phenomenal setup there. Then in his basement, you go down, as you go down the basement, right at the end, there's this big picture frame and it says JTR speakers, Scott Newby experience, 150 dB term lab certified. So he's measured it with a term lab. It's now increased. It used to be 50,000 watts. Now I think he said he's at 54,000 or 56,000 because he added another captivator. That was a surprise for everybody.
It's 54 because it's only a 4,000.
Oh, that's right. There was one of them he said he picked up that. Yeah, that was a used one from a friend of his. So so 54,000 watts. He has a total now of 9 JTR Captivator 6,000s and 1 4,000. Crazy room. You can see this sign down at the bottom: extreme sound pressure levels, SPL. Please sign insurance waiver prior to entry. So everybody that came to the home did sign a waiver saying, hey, look, I'm not going to hold you liable. But the other good thing is Scott always provides hearing protection. And anytime you're listening to really loud, especially anywhere near 150 dB, you really need to wear hearing protection. And it's an experience. But here you can see his rack, what he's working with there, an Anthem. He's got some Rotel amplifiers down at the bottom. I think it's a Cinegrand from, what company is that? Remind me.
Who? Where?
Down at the very bottom, the amplifier.
I don't know.
Cinegrand. It's an old school amp.
I know he had a lot of Rotel stuff.
Yeah, the Rotel's up top.
But I don't know what the other stuff is.
Yeah, let me know in the chat, guys. Who is Cinegrand? I vaguely remember the name. But here you can see just more. So this is looking at like when you first walk in the door, which is to the right. You've got amplification on the right, small rack. You've got the JTR 212 HTRs for his side surrounds. There's one of the captivators on the ground. So that'd be, if you were sitting down in the seats, that'd be your far left. And then right behind you, you've got 2. And which one's this? That's the, not thin. What does he call it? Not slim. What's the name of that captivator? Because there's different profiles. It's not the sofa
So
table.
that is the
What's the word for it? Not
not the
thin.
TL. It's the
Yeah, it's not the tall. Anyway, I can't think of it.
LP.
LP model. Okay, low profile. That's what I was thinking. So these are low profile. And so he just added the one on the top prior to everybody getting there. And then right behind the subwoofer or behind the seats, there's 3 more. So each seat, kind of in between the 2 seats, you've got one. And then on the other side of the room, you can see. So if you were sitting in the seats, that'd be to your far right. There's another one there. And then we've got 3 of them up. I'm sorry, 2 up front. So it's kind
He
of hard.
clearly has room if you go back and look at the back for 3 more.
We could add some more.
Actually, 5 more. So you could do 3 across the back, more LPs.
Yeah.
And then you could do 1 more on the left and then 1 more on the right. And Jeff Permani and I were talking about it. And we, instead of putting the speakers on top of the subs, you mount them to the subs. So you use the subs as a wall and mount to the sub.
That's hilarious.
Right? I think that'd be entirely effective.
Yeah,
and you
so
actually kind of get the room within a room effect because you have timber, air gap, Baltic birch, air gap, Baltic birch, room. I mean, I think it just is a win-win. So why Scott is not doing this, I don't know.
I think Kat is why Scott is not doing this. She says
Kat,
absolutely not.
She talked to me privately, is a full supporter of buying another 5.
Oh gosh, man. See, look.
Right, Kat?
Oh, mercy.
I know you and Scott watched this together.
And she's telling you, stop it. We don't need any more encouragement from you. But yeah, so this is where we're at this weekend. So this is the Scott Newby Bass Brings Us Together. Scott, let us know in the chat. How many years have you been doing this, you and Kat? I want to say you told me 5, but just let us know.
When you bring up the year thing, I mentioned this while we were there because a lot of people walk into rooms like this and they're like, man, I'm so far from this.
Right.
Yeah. But what they forget is that we've just been doing this journey longer.
Yeah, correct.
So I just randomly asked, and this was when I think there were only 1 or 2 people there on Saturday. It was earlier in the morning. If all 3 of us had started with Klipsch, and I think we had all started with something very similar.
Sure.
Not that Klipsch is necessarily really bad. It was just that's typically a more price effective entry point for a lot of people. I mean, getting into a subwoofer that's $100-150 or something like that, and then going from there. That's what I think people need to really remember because we get a lot. Michael gets a lot of flack for forgetting about the little guy, and it's not that we're forgetting about the little guy showcasing stuff like this. It's just that these guys and us have been in this journey for a long time. And you got to remember that it's all in perspective. It's not like a lot of people go in and just dump tons into a room when they're just getting started, though some people do. A lot of times it's a progressive journey. Like we've gone through and done this step-up approach of we buy one thing, get to a point, well, I want something better, get to a point, get something better, get to a point, get something better. So when we talk about, hey, you should buy the biggest, baddest sub that you could get now, and yes, it's more expensive. The big reason that we say that is because it's going to stop you from having to waste the money on the incremental upgrades in the long run. Like that's everybody does it. So by bypassing that and not buying the 151 and going straight to mid-tier, it stops you from buying and then selling and then buying and then selling and then buying and then selling or just buying and just having a sunk cost. So that's what I want people to remember with this is it's all perspective. And a lot of what we say here is, and I know I'm kind of going off on a tangent, a lot of what we say here is just trying to get people to not have to reinvent the wheel that's already been done by so many people and not have to make the same potential mistakes and sunk costs and loss of financial funds that we've all made. That's all this is.
And the cool thing is one thing I love about Scott and Kat is, people literally, there were some that drove, what was the longest one? I know there was a 10-hour drive.
Colorado was 14
hours. So about 14 hours.
Yeah.
A family was willing to drive. and everybody's at different levels. Some have dedicated theater rooms, some have living room setups. One guy I was talking to, he's like, man, I wanted to come to this because I ain't got nothing like this. I mean, like, I'm talking a really small setup, 5.1. One gentleman I was talking to, Ryan, he has a 20-year-old Runco projector.
What?
20-year-old Runco projector.
Still using it.
Still works. Yep.
Wow.
Yeah. So
I mean, my plasma is 14 years old. So I'm like, oh my gosh. And I'm like, wait.
That's crazy, but that's awesome. But the cool thing is, like, we're literally encouraging everybody. Like, dude, that's awesome. That's incredible. If that is what you have and that brings you joy and happiness, and it brings you opportunities to spend time with family and friends, enjoying movies and music, man, rock it out.
Well, let's talk about that for a second.
Yeah.
Because especially on projectors, people are always, now that the NZ 900 and 800 have come out, I think this is a good time to revisit this. It's important to realize that just because something is new and more expensive, it does not necessarily mean that it is always better.
Sure. Absolutely.
Right. So in all capacities, it may have some that are better, and the new ones absolutely are. Like if we jump from the RS 400, 500, 600, 700, there was a lot of hundreds in that several years when JVC was releasing. And then you go to the NX series, right? If you compare them, which we did in the winter of 22, January of 22, and we compared like an RS 420 or some 400 series
420
to the NX series and the NZ series, specifically to an NZ8. We could have done it to an NZ9, but I didn't take the NZ9 out of the theater. The RS 420 on a small screen, when it was supported by processing like a MWAVE home theater PC, it won.
Yeah.
It beat the NZ8 because it has better contrast, right? It has a better black level than the other ones. Now,
internal tone mapping wasn't
and that's what I was just going to say, that you got to remember that if what you're after, the older stuff delivers, there's nothing wrong with that. And I would encourage you to go down that path. I have customers come up all the time, and I actually came up a couple times this weekend where they're like, I have X, Y, or Z. Should I upgrade? And I'm like, there's no reason to do that upgrade unless there is some actual tangible benefit that you are going to gain. If it is incremental, like if you look at contrast or something or brightness, let's say contrast, a lot of times the contrast has to, and this is a generalization, but the contrast has to double in order for you to perceive a difference.
Like a significant amount.
It has to be a significant difference in order to perceptually see it. And if you're going up by a couple hundred, then no, it ain't worth it, man. So, and especially when you're not directly comparing these products, because ignorance is bliss. If you don't have two projectors next to each other, correct, even if one has much better contrast than the other, you ain't gonna tell. So don't get caught up in the whole upgrade, rinse, repeat thing. It's okay to hold on to things. You don't have 100%. To spend money to think that you're always going to get a benefit in the long run, because sometimes, and a lot of times, you don't.
And you see this guy, look at this, man. Herc says, if it wasn't for channels like this, I wouldn't know what's out there. And if I didn't know what's out there, my daughter would still have a college fund. That's hilarious. You know, I get blamed for a lot of people's impulsive buying.
Michael and Ryan, hated by partners everywhere.
That's hilarious, man. Yeah. I'm surprised like ladies are coming to MWAVE, because I know they
I think a big part of that is just in support of their partners.
What I'm saying is I'm secretly wondering, like, are they going to be ganging up on me for their husbands spending all this money?
Now I say that there are some that are into it, but I think this is generally a male dominated hobby. I think a lot of hobbies are male dominated, right? I think it's just a hobby thing. Like my wife's hobby is the family.
Yeah.
That's what it is. So
Jessica's is running.
I think a big part of it is just support which I think is super cool.
Yes. 100%.
I think it's support of their partner.
Talking to one guy and his wife, and she came to the event yesterday, and I asked her, I'm like, hey, do you like this? She's like, yeah, I like watching movies. Now, I'm not into it as much as he is. And sometimes we would get on kind of more technical talk, and I could see she started just zoning out. She's like, all right, I would just want to stay surface level. You want to go down that route. And Kat's hobby is making sandwiches. What? Wow.
I think she has a shirt for that.
Oh man, don't go there.
That Scott may have bought her.
Oh mercy.
Scott does say that in love. And Kat is probably sitting right next to him.
They've got an awesome relationship, man. They're so much fun to be around. And Kat, I'll just tell this publicly. You are such a great hostess.
Scott's not a very good host.
No,
I'm just kidding. But Kat is the real host. Let's be honest here.
Yeah, she's always making sure we're all taken care of. We got drinks or snacks, and so you're amazing, man. But it's always a fun year. I went last year. It was my first year. This was your first year, Ryan.
It was.
And so let's talk about that a little bit. What was your experience?
I'm kidding. I'll be back.
Yeah.
What was my experience?
Yeah.
I mean, I've experienced most of that before, so it's not like I loved finally getting to be in Scott's system. Right. So I've been in a lot of that stuff. So it wasn't like Jeff told me when I sat down and we were listening to RTJs, he's like, you're the first person to ever listen to these with a face like this.
Yeah.
That was my reaction at the end. And I was getting like hammered by bass coming out of that thing. The light fixtures were going like this. And Jeff's like, what? You have no emotion.
Yeah.
Nothing. I'm just a pit of darkness. There's nothing that comes out. Yeah. So anyway, I just enjoyed the time. It's fun to go to this stuff and for things like this and not work.
Yeah.
Michael, you know this same thing. We actually had a conversation about this there.
We did.
That it's just nice because you didn't pull out your camera it's nice to not have to think about anything.
Yeah.
And I can be an enthusiast. That's really nice. So I am grateful that Scott does something like that because I think it's great for the community. It's great for people to get to know other people in the community, which is cool about home theater because how many hobbies do you build these friendships and then go back and meet these people every year, multiple times a year, during events like this. I mean, there's very few events that bring that kind of people together. So I enjoyed it. I thought I didn't know that I was going to be moving a sub down the stairs when I arrived. So, which it wasn't a big deal, but moving captivators isn't the funnest thing ever. The biggest thing for me and the funnest thing for me was just meeting people, getting to talk and be an enthusiast, but also finally being able to sit down in Scott's space because I've seen so many pictures, but I've never actually been in it. Yeah. So I enjoyed it. I enjoy the people is a big part of this for me.
Yeah. And I saw some people from this year that attended his event last year. Several of them were there. They attended MWAVE last year, and some of them have even been to MWAVE every single year. It's like you said, it's really nice to be able to connect with the community, and Scott and Kat are all about the community. And so they're doing a great work, not only in their home, they're huge supporters of MWAVE. They're going to be there this year. They started a podcast. Actually, now that I think about it, they started the podcast when I was leaving from last year. We had a conversation like the last day because I was there a lot longer. I was probably there 4 days. And they just mentioned in passing, like they were thinking about doing a podcast and they've been talking about it a while. And I'm like, well, why don't you? Well, I don't know about getting in front of camera. I'm like, all right, let's just have this conversation. So we had a pretty lengthy conversation. And I'm like, what do you got to lose, man? Just go for it, And they did, and they're doing an awesome job. So I'd love for you guys to subscribe to their channel if you aren't already. Scott and Kat. It's called Living It with Scott and Kat podcast. But they're just a great couple. And Scott, dude, you're like hammering out live streams continually. He has special guests on there, Kat's on there. I think on Friday nights they do more home theater related. And then when they have theirs with Scott and Kat, it's kind of more everything that they're interested in, whether it's traveling, cruise, gambling, just everything that they share together as a couple. So, but just super cool, man. But we had a great time together. All right, I'm gonna star something. And Ryan, if you don't mind, just keep starring some.
I've been starring.
Cool, very cool. It's always difficult for me. So, all right. So here's where I want to go with this. So we had an amazing time, but oh, I thought I put the banner up. I did not. Oh well. Here, let me do this real quick. Can you have too much bass? All right.
I mean, it's the name of the stream.
I know, but why not? Let's make it official. Can you have too much bass? And so we're here at this crazy system, 4 18s in the living room, 18 18s in the basement.
There was a lot of bass.
Yeah. And so the question comes, and some people even say, and people that even attended, they don't know what to expect. You know, is it going to be so much bass that I can't, hear anything? Well, when he's doing the 150 dB demo, yeah, it's earplugs in. That whole demo is just about feeling your internal organs being rearranged. I mean, that's
like
really what
literally having your nostrils go like this.
It's wild. But what he typically does is he's got a set of videos, video clips, demo clips, and he'll run it for, I think it's about 20 minutes. And so he'll set his timer, or he'll bring people down there. There's
for the normal demo.
Correct.
Yeah. So
they'll come down, put them in the chair, let them know what they're going to experience. We're going to run through about 20 minutes of demos. I'll come back in. We'll get you set up with the earplugs, and then we'll go into the, the extreme demo if you want that. And so he'll set a timer on his phone, start the demo, walk out, and you listen at just the normal volume. You're listening at, most of the clips are at reference. Some of them were a little bit under reference, but the way that they were mastered. But there's probably about 5 different video clips that you go through. And so you get to experience 18 inch, 18, that's hard to say, 18 inch subwoofers in a system in a normal volume and what that sounds like. So we're going to talk about that. Is, if you have all these subwoofers, is that too much? If we boost them, is that too much?
Well, and this was started by Matt Pose, released a video talking about this.
Yeah. And so Matt has a great channel.
It's been
let's pull this up.
I don't know what the right word is. It's people they're on both sides of this.
100%. And so I think it'd be just really it was Ryan's thought. He was like, man, I think it'd be kind of cool because here we are coming off this event. Obviously, there's a ton of bass. Matt Pose just posted a video called Bassaholics. And in that video, he shared his thoughts on a lot of us have too much bass. Like we've got the bass boosted too much. And so I just think it's going to be a fun conversation around that. And so we'll pull some of the things that he mentioned in that video. But definitely go check out Matthew Pose. He makes great content.
He does.
Very, very educational guy, very knowledgeable. And he's going to be speaking at MWAVE this year. So it's going to be super cool.
Matt is just be aware that his videos a lot of times are on a more technical level.
100%.
So he doesn't necessarily sugarcoat things or bring things down. Sometimes it's technical, but if you don't understand something, I encourage you to go look it up and read about it because it's all part of growth and gaining more knowledge in the space. Matt knows what he's talking about. And I think don't discount what he says. I think it's important. Now, there's been a little bit of light controversy around what he was talking about because people, I think, are very passionate about their bass.
Mm-hmm.
I do think that he's right in a way, but I also think that this space is subjective, right? I think there is you start at neutral, start at a flat response,
Mm-hmm.
and then you subjectively bias everything from there. Just like I encourage people to do with Envy. You start with a ISF level calibration, you're nice and neutral, and then you do what you need to do from there and make the changes to create a subjective experience that is indicative of you, because we're all culminations of our own life experiences. What I want is very different than what Michael wants. What Michael wants is very different than what Jonathan wants.
Yeah.
So we're all going to be different, and it's really important that we all get the opportunity to create experiences that are for us. Now, what I think Matt was talking about is when you increase the bass, right? If we've got a nice flat frequency response, and I don't know which way the camera's going because it reverses things, and
Right?
reverse things. But if you've got your house curve and the bass is coming up, I don't know, is that the right way? Am I doing it the right way?
I was typing. Yes.
That's the right way.
Yep,
Okay.
the bass is on
So
that
if
side.
you've got here and then it comes up and then it plateaus again for the bass, right? As it comes up, it's when your crossover point happens, and if it's at 80 hertz, it's not just like, hey, I'm coming at 80 hertz and then I'm all of a sudden up here. It's a gradual rise. And a lot of times, the higher you go, the further out your incline starts, and the higher it will go. So you're not just boosting the low frequencies, depending on what your crossover point is. The higher you're boosting things, the more encroachment you're making on the higher frequencies, and they are also increasing. So MW was talking about this earlier in chat, that it can muddle the higher frequencies, and it absolutely can. The other thing, and the reason I think people have a tendency to do this a lot of times, and Mr. Seaton and I were talking about this at length at Scott's for a while, and this is my opinion. I'm not saying this is what Seaton thought. This is my thought on this whole thing, is that, and Matt's actually talked about this in other videos, not necessarily related to bass, but just in other videos as it pertains to reference, is that a lot of people, and this is why we push for speakers that are reference capable and above, is that a lot of people have speakers that are not capable of the bass volumes that they want. And because of that, they end up pushing to volumes and the speakers can't handle it. Well, we perceive distortion a lot of times as things being too loud. And that's why you'll like wince. And there are certain sounds like nails on a chalkboard and things that are painful to your hearing.
Not pleasing, yeah.
Not pleasing. But if your speakers are distorting, it is not a nice feeling, right? You do not like how that sounds, and it feels painful. So subjectively, what I have noticed is that if your speakers are distorting and they're getting into a point of being overdriven, it subjectively sounds like it's too loud. So you end up turning down the speakers, but compensating by turning up the bass, because we all want that tactile feel. So you end up with something that looks like this. Okay. Because you're trying to get that tactile feel, but really your speakers should also be up here, because a lot of the sound pressure or the energy is in this mid region. But if you keep your speakers down here, you lose tons of it. And that's not great. So this is what ends up happening in a lot of these situations when it should be.
So there's a gap between the performance of,
and I think it's caused by performance. I think a lot of times it's performance of the speakers, because what I've noticed as I've gotten into, and MW brings, it's not just speakers. It could be your amp. It could be many different things, but it's the signal chain is what I'll say for the speakers and not the subs. Is they compensate by having this inability in the higher mids and the high frequencies by raising or keeping the speakers up, because they're chasing that tactile feel. And if you have a speaker, like I always go back to PA and concerts with JBL, QSC, Electro Voice, and all these big boy companies that are in the pro scene. If you're at a concert, it is unbelievably loud.
Yeah.
Unbelievably loud.
Almost
But
uncomfortable.
Your ears don't hurt, right? They may hurt the next day, and sometimes they hurt because the sound is wonky, but a lot of times at a concert, they don't hurt, and it's super loud. The same thing can be achieved in home theater if you get speakers that are capable of way up here. You can get to volumes that you never thought you could get to if you have a speaker that can get there. A lot of people think that reference is ridiculously loud, and it is.
I think
it's way louder than it is because their speakers, their signal chain distorts before it gets there, and we perceive it as potentially louder than it actually is. Now, at 105, 80, 105 peaks, 85 is still really loud.
Yeah,
but
sure.
You can sit in it. Like our CD demo that I've talked about a couple times on the stream.
Yeah.
The CDO demo is, I've been partnered with the Trenov Room with MadVR for a few years. And we do at the end of the show what we call the CDO demo.
Yeah.
And what that is we just pull off the training wheels. We show only for the people that are involved in the room. Otherwise, we would need the waivers that Scott used here.
Yeah.
What the system can do. And you just let it rip. So we were pushing in the room, watching like a quiet place and music and a bunch of other stuff over 140.
Yeah.
And you could sit in there and it was stupid loud, but it didn't hurt your ears. So I took my earplugs out for a moment.
Yeah.
And it didn't hurt. It was unbelievably loud,
sure,
but it didn't hurt. And if you did that with a lot of other rooms, it would not be pleasurable.
Yeah.
So I think it's really important that people realize that a lot of times we compensate for the inability of our hot mids and highs with more lows because we want the tactile feel. But we really, and this is what I like, should be more here. This is subjective.
Sure.
Scott knows what he likes.
Yeah.
He wants all the bass. And there's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah.
Like I don't, one thing I disagree with Matt on is that I don't like telling people what they should do. I think it's important to show them and allow them to listen to the bass line, right? The neutral, and then allow, because if you don't start at neutral, you don't know where or which way you should go. So you start here and then start coloring either way. Like something Scott does, and I keep bringing up Scott because it was just this weekend.
Yeah.
Scott also likes like a 5 dB tilt at the high end. He doesn't like all the brightness.
So he pulls it back a little bit.
His room is much warmer. He has a 5 dB tilt all the way through
on
his
the top end.
No, the whole thing. He tilts the entire range. So that's subjective. And I think it's important that you create a subjective experience that you want because it's your room.
Yeah.
You should listen to it how you want.
Yeah. And Matt even mentions that at the very beginning. He's like, look, this is my opinion. I believe my opinion's right, but it's ultimately your system. You're going to tweak it the way you want. I just think I've got some thoughts I want to share on this. And one thing you mentioned, tactile response. So a lot of times we do add more subwoofers or bigger drivers because we want to feel that bass in the room more. So in my room, I've never really been able to get tactile bass from like 12-inch drivers. It just doesn't happen. Part of the reason why it doesn't happen is because I'm on a concrete slab. So here in Florida, we don't have basements. We don't have a floating floor. We don't have, wood joists that would help accentuate.
Hi, Jessica. Happy Mother's Day.
Oh, hi.
Yes. She's printing out some stuff for tomorrow. But yeah, she, oh goodness, that just, what was I saying?
You were talking about tactile and you're on a concrete slab.
Yes. So one thing that Matt mentioned is he said, instead of maybe adding more subwoofers, don't be scared to add on to your room, to build and construct in your room, to do what he calls a floating floor. And that way the bass that you have, you don't maybe need more subwoofers, but the bass that is produced from that system is going to kind of resonate and excite that floor. And then that's going to,
if you're looking for the shake.
Correct. That's what he was saying. Yeah.
But the riser or a floating floor or suspended or whatever you're doing isn't going to give you the chest thump. So something else that I think happens that people do unknowingly is their base calibration. And this is just from calibrating people's rooms and having conversations with people and being in people's rooms, is their base calibration isn't spot on.
Yeah.
So they're trying to get the tactile feel again by raising the volume, but their subs are fighting each other, or they're fighting the room, or something is happening that is creating nulls, or they're sitting in a null, right? So there's a bunch of different factors that can cause us to increase the low frequency level, because at the end of the day, we're trying to chase that concert experience of pressurization and us feeling the pressure on our chest. That's what we're chasing. When a gun goes off, right? In real life, you get hit with that sound pressure in the chest and you can feel it. And we want that in the theater and we chase that. But there are things a lot of times that stand in the way. And whether you are realizing them or not, I think sometimes causes us to compensate in ways that are potentially creating other problems.
Yeah. And I think when you mentioned earlier that sometimes our system can't keep up with the bass, and so that's going to be an imbalance. If you've got speakers that aren't capable of reproducing, let's say if you're listening to reference volume, if they're straining, if they're struggling, but the subwoofers are going nuts, it is going to be imbalanced. But I believe that you can have, so in prime example, again, going back to Scott's setup, when you're watching, I'm trying to think, like, what were some of his demos? Overlord. That's huge bass. But you also got lots going on. And at no point did I go, man, you know, I'm kind of missing out on some details.
Or the big one for that is A Quiet Place, right? Because there's so much, that scene, the whole movie, the dynamics and the dynamic range in that, there's huge amounts of bass. But there's also really minute details. So if you do not, and I think Matt talked about this, if your speakers are not loud enough and your bass is way up here, you miss all of that dynamic range. You're not hearing that, and you're potentially also over boosting a lot of this, depending on if you have the ability to change your crossover and how that's being done. Is it a LR12 24? Is it a different curve? It just depends. And most AVRs and pre's don't have the ability to even change that. So most of them, I think, are LR24s, I think.
So this goes along with what we're talking about. He says, is it the speaker's fault or your equipment that drives the speakers?
Either or both.
You can have an AVR that can run out of gas.
Sure, you could run out of voltage.
It's going to go into distortion. It's not going to sound. Here's a prime example. I had a Yamaha. It was a RXV 1800. Phenomenal AVR. I love that AVR. And I was driving very efficient speakers. I had a 5.1 system at that time, maybe a 5.2, but the subwoofers are being powered by the amplifier, so that's not pulling any power from the AVR. And I'm listening to it, everything's great, but I wanted that 7.1 system. I added 2 speakers, the surround backs. And when I added it and I'm watching a clip, I'm going, man, it just seems weird. I didn't know what was going on. And I found myself, I turned up the volume, but I still wasn't getting like what I was experiencing with 5 speakers. And it wasn't until later on. What's that?
You ran out of wattage.
Yeah. And I read a article they did, I think it was Stereophile or something like that. They did a actual bench test on that particular AVR. And they found that with 7 channels running, I think it was about 55 watts per channel. And that you can still get a great sound out of 55 watts per channel. But I'm telling you, it just adding 2 speakers sucked the life out of that AVR. It really changed the dynamic. And then that's when I later on added an amplifier so that I don't run into that, so that I can go to the levels that I'm comfortable with without having to worry about it running out of gas, getting into distortion and so forth. But yeah, I think you're right. It can be either one. Your speakers cannot be capable. Some of them aren't physically capable of hitting reference. You get a small bookshelf speaker, a lot of times they're not going to be able to hit reference volume. You got some towers that can't handle, and hit reference volume.
So
I think it can go both ways for sure.
Greg brings up a point, and reference isn't for everybody. Most of us actually don't watch at reference. I am pretty close. Jonathan's pretty close.
Jonathan likes reference.
It depends on the person. I just like that volume. It's not for every movie, but I do like it, those volumes. But I think it's also important to note that just because you don't listen at those volumes, I still think it's important that you have a very capable system. And here's why. Sure. If you're applying EQ and you're listening at X volume, and you have maybe you have, I don't know, a really narrow Q factor, you're not going to do anything with that because we can't hear that. But let's say you've got something that's maybe a lot wider and a lot shallower. You may apply a really wide filter, or your room EQ may apply a really weird wide filter, or let's say it's maybe like 8 dB down here. Okay. Just making something up. So
yeah, sure.
Don't roast me for this. I'm just trying to provide an example. Yeah.
Up.
So let's say you've got an 8 dB and you need 8 dB of boost.
Right.
Well, if you apply and send out 8 dB, your speaker is going to play, because this is probably created by a null in your room or something, an interaction in your room. Your speaker at the driver is still playing this, not this. It thinks it's doing this. So now it's going to be doing this. So, but if you don't have the headroom on the driver to be able to do that, you've just induced it running out of gas and coming into distortion, overdriving it, X, Y, or Z, or amps, or all kinds of different stuff. So just because you're not necessarily listening at those high volumes, if you're applying room EQ, it doesn't necessarily mean, and there's other reasons too, it doesn't necessarily mean that you don't need that extra headroom. And if you are listening to reference, it's even more important to get a speaker that far exceeds that at your main listening position. Right. Because just because it can do 105 at 1 meter, remember, every doubling of distance, you're losing 6 dB, not accounting for room gain. So therefore, it's really important that at the driver at 1 meter, you're far exceeding or capable of exceeding reference. And that's something that I think a lot of people also don't think about. They're like, oh, my speaker can do 105 dB. Well, that's typically at 1 or 2 meters at X voltage. And if you're sitting 3 or 4 meters away, or even 5 meters away, because I know some people do that, well, you're in for a potential world of trouble, depending on your listening habits.
Yeah. I like this thought right here. Rob says, if it's not clean bass, it's just a messy message.
That's a great way to put it.
I like that a lot.
That is a great way to put it.
Yeah. And so part of that, what Ryan's talking about, by having more capable system than what you maybe necessarily need, you don't have to worry about it going into distortion. And think about this. So Scott has 18 18s. Does he need 18 18s?
They ain't even trying.
But that's the thing. They're not working hard at all.
Well, so, at the volumes he pushes in the demos,
but you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
I always equate it to, I have two kind of analogies. You can talk about like a sports car. So if you've got a car that has a capability of, let's say, exceeding 150 miles per hour, 180 miles per hour, or approaching 200 miles per hour, are you ever really going to need that? Maybe not. But I tell you what, there are times that you need to get out in traffic or get onto the interstate very, very quickly. And you've got that reserve power on tap at any moment. And so when you're watching a movie like A Quiet Place, I mean, your subwoofers aren't moving. Your speakers aren't really moving. It's super, super chill. And all of a sudden, everything breaks loose. Boom. And they're like 0 to 100. You got that on tap. And so you don't have to worry about those over excursions. You don't have to worry about getting into, distortion, and that's going to muddy up that sound. But I just really like the way that you phrase that, Rob. That's super cool.
Well, it's not only
clean
just clean
it's a messy
bass, it's just clean sound.
Yep.
If it's not clean sound, it's a messy message. And that's
I like that
absolutely
part.
true.
Yeah.
And I think MW says something here. I think you can raise bass until things you recognize psychoacoustically start to sound wrong. I think that's subjective, and I think that's an excellent point. But what I was going to say about this is that psychoacoustics, I think, is really important, and we all kind of differ with this depending on who we are because of our life experiences. So there was a test that Matt actually talked about that several people did, and the perception of the low frequency was like to sound equal to them. There was like a 10 dB difference for what they said made it sound the same. So it's important to realize that not everybody's ears are the same. Not everybody's experiences are the same. Not everybody's rooms are the same. And it's important to be okay. And you should be confident in saying, this is how I like it. This is not Michael or I or Matt saying you need to listen to it this way. We're just providing possible reasons that people potentially may like elevated bass in comparison to their bed layer and tops or their speakers. Anyway, should we get off that soapbox?
Yeah, man. Yeah. And I don't even necessarily think it's a soapbox. I just think it's a cool conversation because it's a varying of opinion, and that's totally fine. One thing I've always been an advocate for on my channel, I think we should be able to have healthy conversations when me and Ryan disagree, or me and Rusty, or Ryan and Jonathan, or me and Matthew Pose.
You guys are obviously all wrong.
Exactly. It doesn't have to be like, he's stupid, he doesn't know what he's talking about. Let's have a healthy conversation around this. I think more people should be able to do that in life in general and not get all upset.
It's like everybody liking different speakers. You, Jonathan, myself like very different speakers.
For sure.
So there's nothing wrong with that. This is why we encourage people to go listen. You were entitled to your opinion, and that is what makes this hobby so cool, is that there's a scientific objective starting point, but it definitely does not mean that you need to stay there.
Yeah. See, man, like he's wanting me to be an advocate and like talk his wife into this. He needs more subs is what he's saying. I'll hook you up, man. Give me a call.
Should we talk about my room?
Yes, man. Give us an update. So you have got a lot going on.
The Mad VR Experience Center. Oh joy. I got asked by so many people about that I enjoy talking about it, so don't feel bad. I enjoy talking about it. So where we left off last week was it didn't fit down the stairs. And I was going to talk to a structural engineer, and we were hopefully going to make it into the basement. Jonathan was like, cut it in half.
Yeah.
Well, I'm not cutting it in half, but it won't fit. It will not come down the stairs. The joist that is at the top is a load-bearing joist, and the staircase above it sits only on that joist. So my stairs have two stringers in the middle. So my builder knew that I had some screws loose, and I was potentially going to be moving some heavy things, and double stringered. And that's not the problem. The problem is that if I remove that joist, the stairs going to our second floor are supported by the subfloor.
Yeah.
And that subfloor is supported by a joist that is 12 inches further away. Okay. So what can potentially happen then is the subfloor will go, and then I'm going to get cracking upstairs. Now, we could potentially solve that by using floor jacks and sitting them on the stairs, then reinforcing underneath the stairs with 2x4s or something so that nothing sags, because then the stairs would be supporting the 50 and the staircase above it. We could do that. But then the problem is, how do we replace the joist? Well, you have to sister it. And to sister it, sistering meaning I would have to put in supporting new steel and 2x10s and stuff up there and overbuild it because it's no longer one continuous piece. I have to get, because my house is supported, the joists are supported by steel beams. So I would have to get these sister joists 10 feet over in either direction to the steel beams. And I have to do that from the staircase, push them in, cut out all of the 2x4s in drywall in order to get into there to be able to sister them in. And it would just, it ain't going to work. So it won't come down the stairs. Now, that does not mean that there won't be a 50 in the basement. There will be. So Doug Chappello, I kind of put out a 911.
Yeah.
And he graciously answered. I put up
He
the
had the
bat
bat
signal,
signal.
and he graciously saw it
Yeah.
and came over.
Yeah.
We are going to build a new cabinet, and it's already started.
Yeah.
In the basement. This new cabinet is actually bigger than the previous cabinet. So the previous cabinet was roughly 68 by 68 by 27, roughly. The new cabinet is 68 by 68 by 48. So we have almost doubled the size of this cabinet. And the reason we're doing that is because talking to Jeffrey from Ascendo, the cabinet was undersized. Like if you think about most sealed stubs, they're boxes, they're squares, or they're tall or wider or something like that. So this one was not, it was like a, I don't know. I don't even know how to compare it. It was not deep enough for it. The cabinet was not large enough for this sub. Okay. It needed to be a lot deeper. And the bigger we made the cabinet, the more extension and the more output we were going to have. So he's like, just make it bigger. You're going to lower the resonance frequency, meaning it's going to be in the lower range, but we're going to fill it to help stop those resonances. So it is in construction. This sub is going to take approximately 20 4x8 sheets of Baltic birch to build one cabinet. So this 150 will take approximately 20 sheets to build, which is insane to build one sub. So hopefully it'll be done by the beginning of June, and then we'll be installing the room. The room is currently over the Atlantic Ocean on a boat.
Nice. On its way.
It should hit the port of Houston like the 28th of this month. And then we will ship it here from Houston. Maurizio from Officina and Cameron from Insane AV are going to come up. We're going to get the room installed. Should take about 3 days. The Christie Griffin is on its way.
I can't wait to see that, dude.
It measured around 10,001 native contrast, which is for a projector that can do the things that thing can do. It is. And I talked to Steve. Steve is an enthusiast who lives up north of Chicago, and he has a Griffin. He's like, it's amazing.
Yeah.
So I'm excited about that. But that's the main updates. Somebody was asking how many layers is that sub? It is 2 layers of Baltic birch. So 2 3/4-inch layers of Baltic birch on all sides.
And Baltic birch is like really dense, right?
Really dense. And I'm lucky that I have a supplier of it here because it's a specialty wood a lot of times. Big box stores carry birch. They don't carry Baltic birch a lot of times. But each sheet weighs around 100 pounds.
Yeah.
So this sub theoretically will weigh over 2,000 pounds when it's installed.
So if you ever sell the house, the subs stay in.
No,
right?
I mean, well, if we ever sell the house and we're moving the theater, I'll pull the driver out like we've done before, and then we'll put it. We'll demolish the cabinet, or they.
No, dude, that's gonna be the hot tub for the next.
They could use it like a closet or a hot tub, or you know, you could bury a body in it or something.
It could be a
like
plant. I mean, they could do a garden in there. You wouldn't be able to get to the middle of it, but it'd still be a cool garden.
I mean, the sub cabinet is 4 feet deep
I know it.
and almost 6 feet tall
That's wild.
and 6 feet wide, which is just I never.
Yeah.
It sucks, but at the end of the day, it is beneficial because that sub did need a bigger cabinet.
Yeah.
Like and I'm very glad that I had the room is set up in a certain way that it facilitates me adding another 2 feet onto the back of that cabinet because it will be beneficial. You won't be able to see it because the room is 28 feet long, and what people will be able to see is only like 15 feet. So I've got the extra room back there.
Rob says talk about a ton of bass.
Yeah. Yeah. But I'm very blessed and very thankful for Doug. Doug, for anybody that doesn't know him, he does a lot in the DIY community historically. He's built a lot of subs. He has Gallahorns and stuff in his ceiling. He's built speakers. He's made some excellent stuff.
Yeah.
So this isn't like cutting corners or a loss in quality. I think from what we've learned about that sub from the original cabinet maker, because Ascendo with these subs, they don't make these cabinets. Because they're so large, they're kind of custom built for the particular install. And there was just the cabinet maker did some interesting things with this one that I've got. It's not bad. It's just where we can take it to the next level. So I think
speaking of that, will the cabinet give it like any additional capability? I know you and I have talked about that a little bit.
It'll have potentially more extension. It'll have more output, which leads to more extension and just all around better.
Because we know you were struggling
with output. Oh yeah, we're struggling in this room with output.
It's crazy.
But you do have to fight some lower frequency modes in the sub, so we got to fill it. It wasn't filled previously, but we're gonna fill it with probably polyfill or fiberglass insulation or something else.
So Tony says, I expect Ryan to follow Matthew's advice, 2 to 3 dB hot on the bass there, buddy.
I like to run 6 to 8 dB hot is usually where I'm at. I mean, that's where I like to subjectively be. That's where I'm at. So I like it when Jonathan's about that point. I think between 6 and 8. Scott likes it about 14. So higher. Historically, with my previous room, I had it hotter because I was compensating for what I was talking about previously.
Right.
But now, like playing with the Swans and doing some stuff with other speakers, I've realized that I really like having my speakers that loud, and it allows my subs to be that loud, and I'm able to get everything together.
Great question. Are you ever going to full send the 50?
Yeah.
That's why I bought it.
That's why we're doing this, man.
There was no like what else do you think, man?
We're gonna do the Waver headphone demo, and we're gonna do full send on everything. I mean, we're gonna let it rip.
Yeah, I'm excited about that Christie too, man. That's gonna be beautiful.
I'm so excited about that
because you're not even all right. So think about this. Another prime example, you've got tons of headroom. That thing can get ridiculously bright, but by dialing it back, how does that benefit your system?
So there's a couple reasons that helps. Is one, I can use potentially lower gain screens. I can compensate and use gray screens or darker material to perceptually boost contrast. I can have a constant laser level. So even as the laser light source deteriorates over time, I can just compensate by boosting it up.
So think about this. We had a conversation about that, and you found out something new about that. It does it automatically
by itself.
Check that out, man. So you don't even have to adjust it. There's a gentleman that came. I did his home theater tour. Oh gosh, I think it's been 3 years ago, Steve. And he had an older Christie. He upgraded to the Christie Griffin. And he was telling Ryan, he's like, oh yeah, man, I love this feature. It adjusts, by itself. And Ryan's like, what? That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's super cool, man.
So I'm really excited about that.
To gain at the shows.
Yeah. Mine's not going to be that low. The experience center's not 0.2. I think we're going to be at like 0.7. We may compensate for that and change in the future. I don't know. This is just where we are right now. Trying to think if there's anything else going on with that.
Yeah, where's the Christie going? Is it going to be above the 50?
Fit, it'll be on the 50.
On it? Okay.
We're going to try it on it. I mean, it's the sub is so big, it provides a perfect platform for it. Now, I'm going to put some decouplers and some isolators underneath it, but that's where we're going to start because it would stop me from having to build a platform.
Yeah.
And then I can just build a box that the Christie would go in.
So it's kind of like a hush box.
Yeah. And then put it on isolators. And then I have HVAC. There is 8-inch ducting, exhaust ducting that runs up and out of the room. But talking to Steve, he said that it really doesn't get that hot because you're not running it at 100% laser. Like if I did that,
maybe like an oven,
I'd probably hit like 500 nits or something on that screen, which I'll probably showcase it, but I'm not going to watch movies that bright. Like you'd watch Lucy and just immediately be blinded.
Yeah.
Your eyes would boil. Be over.
Brett said, smiling ear to ear. This is so ridiculous.
I have it's I've always believed in trying to do things no compromise, and there's some directions I could have gone, and Mad VR we could have gone together that would have been better for me financially.
Yeah, for sure.
But at the end of the day, what I pride myself on as a business owner and how I've built things, I don't want to compromise.
Yeah.
I want to be able to say de facto that this is what I believe is the pinnacle of what can be achieved. I think. I mean, I wish the only thing that I wish my ceilings were taller. That's it.
Yeah.
I'm limited by ceilings. Shut up, Tony. I don't need an eclipse. I do draw the line somewhere.
Yeah, that thing's something else.
Yeah, I don't have the room for an eclipse.
Yeah.
So that would have been...
The eclipse is about the size of your 50. It's like...
Yeah, with all 3 units and stuff, yeah.
Air conditioners.
And when you look at the eclipse and its capability, at low ADL scenes, it's way up there. But as you come down, right, the Griffin and the Eclipse are like right here. They're right next to each other. So perceptually, off of those really low ADL scenes, I don't know.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a measurable difference. What I know is I have no idea. I don't know anyone that has them right next to each other.
You're ceiling like 8.5 or 9?
89 inches.
80, which is
under 8 feet.
Okay, so less than 8 feet. Okay.
Because I lost 3 or 4 inches with the wrist eclipse and hat channel and OSB and all that stuff. Ryan, I know they've making changes. I'm still not putting one in there.
Yeah.
It's not happening.
I love this. Matthew Post forgot more in his sleep last night than these two will ever know. I know for me, he did.
Dude, yes, I agree. Matt is
incredible, dude. He really, really is.
Yes.
We're excited to have him at MWAVE.
And I'm not this whole thing that we're talking about. I am not saying that Matt is wrong. Yeah. I am expanding on what Matt is talking about. That's all I'm doing.
Well, Matt knows his stuff, man. Yeah, I had a great time with him. I went over to his house.
I like Matt.
It's been, I don't know, maybe 6 months ago. I went over there and he's got a great per-listen setup. His is the only in-wall setup that I've heard that I was like, holy cow, like this is legit. Like I didn't know you could get that level of immersiveness and clarity and detail from an in-wall system. Usually there's a pretty good compromise there. So
yeah,
but
per-listens. They're expensive though, but solid. What am I using? What's going to be in the experience center for mid-bass? So the speakers are 3 Black Swans up front. They're active. Then everything else is 12-inch Pro beryllium passives and the surround layers and the tops. I would have wanted to do the 15s, but the 15s are too big. And I'm just gaining some SPL and a little bit of low end extension.
Yeah.
And then the subs are 821s. So there's 621s up front and 2 in the rear. Those, it's weird to say that 21s are the mid bass drivers.
Right. It's like, what the heck?
And then the lows, the infras are 2 32s up front and then the 50 in the rear. And the 32s are in the basement right now.
Oh.
It looks, they look tiny in comparison.
That's hard to say, right?
Yeah.
You know, I mean, to think that a 32-inch subwoofer looks small.
It does.
But when you put it up to something that's massive like a 50, it's like, oh, that's cute.
Yeah. MW says the 15's dispersion is much better. Yeah. I mean, it's a slight compromise. I wouldn't have done it on the LCRs, right? But I think it'll be fine for the surrounds. I think it'll be better. It'll be fine. Especially with only one row. It'll be okay.
Yeah. It's gonna be cool. Yeah, his whole system set up or listed on MWAVE's website, Midwest AV Experience. If you go up to attend and home theater experiences, it'll take you to this. And Ryan's page is here. You can click on it. It's sold out right now, but you can still see like all the list of equipment and some renderings that they've got.
The funny thing I'll say last about the Experience Center is that when I announced it with Mad VR, Chris Markowitz in Europe, him and I talk frequently, and he's building an Ascendo showroom over there too. So he's a dealer.
Yeah.
And it's like this keeping up with the Joneses between both of us. That's just funny. Subjectively, because he's like, he's doing this. I don't want to be outdone by Chris. Now I need to do this. And then Chris is the same way. He was like, was gonna do the 12s, but now I need to do the 15s because Ryan's doing the 12s and he was gonna do the 15s. So now I'm gonna do the 15s. And it's just something else. Hope it doesn't suck.
Well, a lot of people, including myself, think it's gonna be pretty much in game. That's pretty awesome.
I hope so. I don't want to upgrade again.
Yeah. If you have to upgrade, then they need to close. They're ridiculous.
Oh, we'll see.
Yeah. Cool, man. Well, let's go ahead and jump on to some questions. We're
going to try and take questions for about 45 minutes because I think we're going to leave this at about 2 hours.
All right. So Dewan says, hey guys, sorry can't make it to MWAVE. I want to know, with 7-foot ceilings, do they have projectors? What's he asking there?
Do they have projectors that don't hang too low from the ceiling, or should he go an ultra short throw? The projector hanging low is all dependent on the mount.
They have shallow mounts.
Yeah. They have, you can just get threaded tubing from Home Depot. I mean, it's the same stuff. As long as you get the correct size for the mount that you're using, or you buy a Chief mount or with the Chief tubing, because some of the Chief ones are adjustable, like you can have a different length.
Yeah. Oh, you know what? There was a super chat that came out.
Yeah, there was.
Why didn't it get started?
It did. I got it.
I'm showing 7.
I got it. It's up there right now.
Okay, that's weird. Mine was only showing 7. Hope, appreciate this $5 super chat. Hello, everyone.
Hold on. Let's finish the other question, though, real quick. Okay. So the question for anybody, because I know we changed it and I don't want to go find it again, was, are there any projectors that can be mounted closer to the ceiling? Well, technically, they all can. You just need to have enough lens shift to bring it down. But if your screen's up high enough, that's really not a problem. You would just get a really short pole. And they have some that are like an inch. You could make it as short as you want. So you would run the ceiling mount, your pole, and then the projector mount.
Right.
And that's it.
Yeah, just look for a shallow mount.
Yeah.
So, Hulk says, what would you prefer, an Emotiva RMC1 or a Marantz Cinema 30, strictly home theater? My personal preference, mainly just due to reliability, and it just works solid rock. To me, the Marantz Cinema 30. I would love for Emotiva to be able to make a processor that is just 100% reliable all the time. And my personal experience just hasn't been that, unfortunately. I did talk to a gentleman yesterday at Scott's Place. I think he's running I think there's an RMC 1L, and he said he's had like really no issues with it. And so that's good. Just my experience with the RMC 1. Again, I probably had an early firmware, when it first came out. So hopefully they fixed all those, or at least most of those. But I mean,
Marantz and Denon,
solid.
They've been doing it for so long. Plus,
Yeah.
the Cinema series looks so good. I mean, they come in a couple different colors. They're just, I'd buy Marantz. That's the direction I would go.
Tony, did you have the RMC 1, I believe?
He did.
He did.
He was not happy about it. Their amps are all right.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
Especially at the price point. I'm not a huge fan of them. I mean, I'm a believer I like the confidence in knowing I like that to a level. So.
Yeah, he had the RMC 1.
But if you do need a Marantz, let me know, because I know they can be a little bit, especially the Cinema 30. That's going to be more on the expensive side. But you get that, and it does everything. I mean, it's got enough output channels. It's got enough features. It can do die rack. I mean, it's a really solid piece of kit.
Yeah. Just curious, Ryan, how many do you show starred questions?
10.
See, I have 7. So something glitched there. So after I get through these 7, I'll let you take over because I don't see any more. All right. So
I can do them. Why don't I do them then?
All right, go
ahead. Justin Baker asks, are the Martin Logan 60 XTIs good for home theater? Ryan mentioned the BT 100s last week. I think I mentioned the B100s and the F100s.
Yeah.
Just wondering if any thoughts on the 60 XTI. Found a good deal. Thanks. They suck. I'm just kidding. They're actually really good.
Yeah.
Now the
series,
the B100 and the F100, the new series is better. Like, it is an evolution. They totally redesigned the speaker. It doesn't share any of the same components. It looks like it does, but they've redone everything. It's just better. Now, in saying that, you can get some insane deals on the 60 XTI. And the 60 XTI, Michael has experience with them. You have them in your house for a while.
Yeah.
And I had them in my basement for a little bit.
Channel, and also had them in the theater room doing some home
Well, we used 60 XTIs at the first year of MWAVE.
Correct.
Yeah.
That's true.
Really good. Do not hesitate in pulling their trigger. Are they reference capable at most main seating positions? No. But if you don't,
I never was complaining. I'll be honest with you.
No, I mean, there's not as many speakers as you may think that can do that. I mean, you're getting into more of active, like Genelec and other manufacturers like that. Things from compression drivers. You've got planar magnetics, different things. Normal. I mean, technically, the 60 XTI is a planar magnetic, but its surface area in comparison to other ones isn't as large. So let me backtrack what I said. I would have to do more research to see what volumes that could hit at certain distances. But I really like that speaker.
Yeah. I think both series, the F200, 60 XTI, they're both phenomenal. Just really great. I keep going back to that folded motion driver, man. I love the way that sounds.
I do too. Gary Pye asks,
all right, go ahead.
Can you have too many subs? No.
I think we hit that earlier, man.
You cannot. At some point, Scott Newby's house will be made of subwoofers. So no, you can't. You're just going to... Diminishing returns on the SPL increase the more you add, because it becomes a doubling. Like, you have to double to get 3 dB. But you're going to smooth out your frequency response, fix room modes, fix nulls, that kind of stuff. Nicholas says, is Ryan's room going to be 150 dB capable? I don't know. I think at certain, like at 40 hertz, because I think at 1 meter, The 32s can hit like 145 dB at 40 hertz or something like that. And the 21s, I think, can do the same thing. So I don't know. I don't know how close we'll get. We'll find out.
Yeah.
Be interesting.
Fun.
We'll get somewhere. How far, I don't know. Anthony says, what's your guys' take on the new SI black screen? Needs a lot of brightness on the projector, but could be pretty cool. Have you seen that? It was at Cedia. Do you remember seeing it at Cedia, hanging up really high? And then Adele was using it at her shows, if I remember correctly. It's a very high ambient light rejecting screen, but it's like black. The surface is black.
Yeah.
So your perceived contrast is
so you gotta have a light Canon.
So
dark.
I don't know what its gain is.
I don't know.
Chat, does anybody know? I think it's cool. I kind of worry about hot spotting and viewing angles with it, though. But I don't know much about it.
I'll see if I can look it up.
Just let chat look it up. They'll tell us.
True.
So this is a question for you.
Oh.
Vivid Theater asks, Michael, how do you find the OSD Nero HTA amps?
So I haven't hooked them up yet. So I did the unboxing. I've got the 2 amplifiers, the mono blocks from, oh man, now I'm drawing a blank. What's the other company? Oh my goodness, I am seriously drawing a blank. I'm still sleep deprived from the weekend. What is not OSD? There we go. It was the Allo Audio 2220. So that's what I've got hooked up to the 2-channel system in there. But in order to review the 5-channel and the 7-channel, I've got to unhook my Monolith 11X, get that out of the way, install them. So that'll be in a future video, but I haven't hooked them up yet.
Christian asks, can MadVR NV be used on a video wall? Yes.
Pretty much any display, right?
Yep. It's display agnostic. As long as it's got one video in, like if the video wall controller or processor has one video in, you could use MadVR. MadVR doesn't support multiple video outs theoretically yet. We've talked about doing multiple. Whether or not that will come to fruition, I don't know, but we'll see.
So Anthony did mention perfect viewing angles, 0 hot spotting. On the SI.
Maybe something I'd look into with the Griffin. I don't know. Von Goul asks, why do we run subwoofers at 50% or lower levels? Distortion? You don't have to. It depends on the gain and what voltage it's being sent by the pre and what its gain is and all that stuff. So I think it's a starting point. But really what you're doing is you're telling, if I remember this right, you're just allowing it to get to its higher output with less voltage from the pre, if I remember correctly. Correct me if I'm wrong, chat. But really you want to set the gain knob on a sub or any amp as low as possible. And then let the pre manage it all. 0.1 gain. That'd be cool.
That's pretty cool.
I'll have to ask them for a test for a sample. I've done some stuff with Screen Innovations, and I haven't been hugely impressed with quality.
That's interesting.
But that may...
They don't recommend it in a dark room.
Why?
Don't know.
Wonder why.
Because it's ambient light rejection screen?
Maybe. I don't know.
Interesting.
I don't know. I know Adele was using it at concerts, so I'm not entirely sure. You got a super chat. You got a couple of them.
Yeah, like I said, none of them are okay, one of them did pop up now. So maybe it's fixed. but the other one didn't. So who knows? Eric, appreciate the $10 super chat. Recently switched to Denon 3800H and very happy. But seems I'm having an issue now with blackouts when having scene transition in John Wick 4.
Blackouts.
So he's saying, so I'm assuming he's watching his movie when it transitions in the scene, like he'll get a drop off from the HDMI for 1 second, like it'll go black and then pop back on. Could that be his HDMI cable?
So let's talk about troubleshooting here real quick, because I think this is really important for people to realize and understand. When you're troubleshooting anything in an AV signal chain, you need to simplify things as much as possible. So you want to start and take as many variables out of the equation as possible. So in this situation, what I would do is I would run source and the display. That is it. And ideally with a passive cable, like a 2 meter, 48 gigabit per second passive cable. Does it work? If it doesn't work, it's one of those 3 devices. Easiest things to change the cable. If that doesn't work, change the source. Maybe change the video input on the display and then go from there. Change settings. Sometimes you can run into issues with like displays not being in standard mode for HDMI instead of enhanced and other things. But if it does work, then you add another device. In this case, probably the AVR. If it doesn't work, when you add in the AVR, well, now you know it's the AVR or some interaction with another device that the AVR is causing. And then you can troubleshoot from there. So it's really difficult to say what this is. In most cases, if you're losing sync, it's either an HDMI cable or some input device or input card, HDMI input card, is being overloaded on one of the devices, or you have an EDID problem. Those are usually the issue. I'd be interested to know if it happens on other movies and what your source is.
Oh, interesting.
Because another thing that a lot of people don't consider is the source material can absolutely have an effect, because depending on the source material, it is going to directly correlate to how much bandwidth is going to be required or asked of all devices upstream. So if you're sending a Blu-ray at 1080p, non-HDR, you're not asking as much as if you're watching, say, Gemini Man in 4K HDR, because now you've gone from 1080p 24 to 4K 60 BT 2020, and you keep going up from there. So your bandwidth requirement, as you're increasing that stuff, you're also asking more of everything upstream. So things to think about.
Going back to that SI, Taylor says it's primarily an LED wall replacement, which is why their only promotional material is in a high ambient light environment. It's kind of sparkly in a dark room.
Yeah, that was my assumption with an ambient light rejecting screen like that, is you get some hot spotting and sparkle.
Yeah, and Eric said his source is Apple TV, but he even has a problem in YouTube.
Is that YouTube on the Apple TV? Because YouTube can be HDR 60, absolutely. So it's source. If you go into the Apple TV and go to the audio video settings, try and downgrade the chroma from, if it's set to HDR, from 422 to 420, and see if your problem goes away.
Because that would lower bandwidth on the cable?
And or lower the frame rate from like 4K HDR 60 to 4K HDR 24, and then set it to not change dynamic ranges and frame rates in that same setting. All of those settings are in the same 3 options. Try changing those and see if your issue goes away. That'll indicate if it's a bandwidth problem, then you can troubleshoot from there.
Yeah. Christian, appreciate the follow super chat. Should front wides match the speakers used for my LCRs or my surrounds?
You want to take that one?
I've seen it both ways. So in Tony, SOWK, he's in the chat. He has identical LCR, but he also has those same speakers for his front wides. Amazing system. I've seen other people have, matching LCR up at the front, and then their front wides and side surrounds and rear surrounds are all the same speaker. So I think really just whatever works best in your setup. I think it can work either way.
I think if they're timbre matched, you're good. I would say having all identical speakers is beneficial.
It's pretty awesome.
But that's really hard to do.
Yeah. Yeah. So I'm going to address this one. I like this one. Evangeliste. Haha, Youthman. Denon also's got some bugs. There's no perfect product for sure. He says you're shooting too much at MWAVE. See it MWAVE. So what I'm sharing is my experience and my experience alone. I reviewed the RMC one. I've owned the Emotiva UMC one back in the day. That was their first processor. I think it was first processor. Both of those extremely buggy. That's my personal experience. Some people have bought those units and they're like, man, it works great in my system. And that's awesome. Nothing wrong with that. I can only share what my experience is. I have owned the Marantz AV77. No, I'm sorry. I own the Marantz SR8012 AVR. Then I upgraded to the 8015 AVR. Then I upgraded to separates, AV7705, and then the AV7706. Do you know how many issues I had with those 4 units? Again, just my personal experience.
There was a big issue with the HDMI 2.1 boards that rolled out from Denon and Marantz.
But what I'm saying, I can only share what I experienced.
Oh, I'm just saying that they're not bug free. Like there's been issues.
Yeah,
absolutely
not. I'm reviewing the Anthem Avium 70 right now. It's not bug free. Sometimes I'll lose sound.
None of them are bug free. Let's go up and talk like real quick. Storm and Chernoff.
It's a computer.
I love the Storm and Chernoff gear, but they themselves have issues. Like we had an issue with firmware on the Storm on their new HDMI 2.1 card that was causing some strange things to happen with EDIDs and the selection of maximum output capabilities of devices. Things were limited. On the Trenovs, we've been running into on their new HDMI 2.1 cards an EDID issue that was causing blanking. And it'll get addressed. This is just stuff that happens, right? It's difficult to test all scenarios for these companies because there's so many variables in a signal chain. There are so many different devices. Yeah. People are probably like, well, they don't test. They should test more. They do test. There's just a lot of things that you can't test for because there's too many devices. There's too many variables in signal chains. You can't test them all. So unfortunately, sometimes the community is beta testing and you just have to buy or trust that the company that you're buying for or from is going to be willing to help you out.
Yeah, for sure. And I know some of you may think, especially if you own Emotiva, I get it. It's like he says, man, I've got an Emotiva. It works great. My problem was CEC. That's awesome. I'm glad. My desire isn't that everybody has issues with Emotiva. I'm just sharing again that I had issues with Emotiva. This was my experience. This was documented in my review of all the things. I even sent them an email and said, hey, look, here's the issues. And I'd been talking with them. Hey, I'm having this issue. We did exactly what Nicholas said. We did a hard reset. We even got to the point, I'm talking with their lead engineer, and he's like, okay, I've tried everything that I can. Let's just do a factory reset. We factory reset it. Everything seemed fine for about a week. And then it all came back. And I'm like,
now in context, how long ago was this?
So this was when it first came out. So again, that was like early firmware. And I mentioned in the review, I said, look, all of these things that I've had issues with, probably every single one of those things can be fixed with a firmware update if they can figure it out. So hopefully, like I said, they've gotten at least most of those resolved. I just haven't had that same experience with any of the Denons that I have reviewed or owned, or any of the Marantz, but they're not perfect for sure. Charlie, appreciate the $5 super chat. Have an Epson LS12000. That's a great projector, man. With a silver ticket AT screen, would upgrading to a Seymour Center Stage XD make a difference? So the age-old question: do screens make a massive difference?
They can. There's a lot of variables with this.
Me personally, I've never seen massive difference. Like
when
I've
I'm
never gone to somebody's house and said, "Oh, I bet that's."
When I'm saying massive difference, I'm saying like comparing going from an ambient light rejecting screen to white, or like totally changing them. I'm not saying, you know, you going from a similar AT screen to another AT screen, or woven to woven.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah. My guess, honestly, is probably not.
Measurably, you'll probably get a measurable difference in acoustics. I think the Seymour Center Stage will be better. I would bet you're going to get a point or two better gain out of the Center Stage than the silver ticket. The Seymour will be built better. But then you have to just weigh, like, is it worth it? How far are you willing to chase the rabbit? That's the question you got to ask yourself. And for the money, Seymour is probably the best. I think you get a lot of these guys have Seymour Center Stage XD screens, and they're in game. There's not really anywhere to go other than that. So is it worth $1,000 or $2,000 or $3,000, depending on how big the screen you're trying to do? That's up to you.
This is funny as heck, man. Since Imadiva stole Youthman's lunch at school, he hates them. I don't. Here's the funny thing. I still have great communication and great relationship with Imadiva. You know, it's like I just did not have a great experience with that processor and the previous processor that I owned. And yes, we did try turning it on and off. My issue, the biggest issue, is 1 out of 3 times when I turned it on, I wouldn't get audio. And I would turn it off, turn it back on, still wouldn't fix it. The only way I could resume audio is to power it off and unplug it. So it would like totally drain all the power from it, then plug it back in, boot it back up, and then it'd work. So
good time.
Yeah. But enough about that. But yeah. What else you got? I know we're having fun though.
Let's do this one. Nicholas, what's better for single digit output, RS2 or Cap 4000?
I shared that in the chat.
RS2.
They're both. Well, yeah, the RS2 is going to dig slightly deeper, but you're probably talking what, 2 hertz, maybe?
I mean,
it's not going to be a massive. It's not like one goes to 20 and one goes to 5. You know what I mean?
Cap will go to 10, and the RS2 will go lower.
I mean, mine have measured down to 5 in my room.
And then you don't have a port.
Mm-hmm.
So
I just told him you'll get more output.
I think it's easier to mix sealed subs. If you're running the cap and only one cap, fine. But other than that, if you're mixing multiple caps or caps with other subs because they're ported, you can run into some issues. So I think it's easier to run sealed subs unless you're chasing the output like some of these guys are. Sealed subs are smaller. They have greater extension. They just don't have as much output, and they're easier to work with. My thoughts.
I see 2 more stars, but you've got more on your end.
Nope, that's it.
Okay.
2 more.
Maybe it kind of reset. I was having some glitches earlier. They weren't coming in. Nicholas says, are Sendo 10 fronts and a Sendo 6 surrounds be able to do reference? Are they capable of reference level?
Yes. It depends, obviously, on the seating distance, right? If you're really far away, the 6s just ain't going to do it. But if you're doing the 10s for LCR and the 6s for surrounds, that's a really common setup that I sell. and it does really well. One of the best theaters I have ever heard uses 10s and 6s. And it was amazing. It's Cameron's from Insane AV, and it was amazing.
He's down in Texas.
Yeah, he's in Houston. So you shouldn't have any problem. The 6s can't sustain reference, but for like your peaks and stuff, yeah, they can. They'll be able to do it as long as you're within a not insane distance.
So another question here. He says, how much amperage do I need for a home theater on a dedicated circuit?
All the amperage.
More the better?
Well, it depends on what he's puts. That was a joke, but it depends on what he's putting on it.
Yeah. So Stephen, again, sharing from my experience, I only have a dedicated 20 amp for all of my equipment except for my projector. Projector is actually outside the room, so it's on a different circuit. But my amplifiers, my subwoofers, all the components in the front, even my outdoor system is on a 20 amp. Now, typically I'm not running the theater room and the outdoor system at all. Actually, I never do that. So it's always one of those two systems, but I've never tripped a breaker, never really felt like I needed more power. But with that said, the more, like the bigger your amplifiers are, the bigger your subwoofer amplifiers are, the more equipment you got hooked up to it, the more wattage you need or more amperage you need. And
I'm only running.
You got 13. A bunch in yours. 13 dedicated circuits. Jonathan has quite a few in his too, right?
It's a lot of it is subs. Mine, it's the amps. I have one circuit per amp. There's a lot of amps. The sub amps are all individual. The projectors. But for the average person, as Ryan Kramer says in chat, 220s is more than enough. For a lot of people, 120 or 115, because most people aren't putting captivators and 2,000 and 4,000 watt subs in their home theater.
So I can share this. I had two clips smaller. They were the RT10Ds. So these had 3 10-inch drivers in each one. It was an active, I think it was an active 10 and 2 passive. And so I had a pair of those, had a single 15 amp circuit, and every time the bass hit, my lights would go woo, 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 woo. So good idea not to put your lights on your same circuit, but that's what I had. And so that was one of the main reason why I went with a dedicated 20 going to my room. And so now the lights are on that original 15, the projector's on another 15 because it's in a different room technically. And then all the equipment's on a 20. And yeah, same. Oh, that's a good question. Evangeliste says, so if you have everything on the same circuit, does that equal less chance of a hum?
It depends.
It gets complicated with the
ground loops and stuff. It can be. I'm gonna say no. There's just some wonky stuff that can happen. Depending on the situation, depending on the devices. They're a pain in the ass to troubleshoot. They're not a huge pain in the ass to fix. You just gotta, it's just sometimes really hard to figure out what they are. We had to battle one while we were at Scott's, and we fixed it by grounding some subs together, and that fixed it. But they're just annoying.
Yeah, several people were sharing about, what they've got in their setup. I've got dual 6,000 watt RS2s on a 15 amp. Doesn't trip. Scott says we blow a 20 pretty easy with the RTJ setup. So it just depends on what you've got connected to it and how much draw it's pulling from that. Rob says I've got 3 dedicated isolated 20 amp circuits. And he said I still chased a ground loop. Yeah,
well, they probably all ground to the same point in the house. Would be my guess. They all ground somewhere together, and you creating a loop. So it could be HDMI coming over it. That's a big common one. They're a pain in the ass, man.
They are. And again, going back to what Ryan was saying earlier, try to get to the least
and just add
amount of pieces to make it work, and see if you get the issue, and then add another component.
Another really important tool to chasing ground loops is cheater plugs. So a cheater plug is literally, think of it like, I guess you're going to bring one up.
I will. I got you, bro.
It's like the end of an extension cord that you can plug another cable into that just gets rid of the ground pin for the guys in the United States. And I would not leave your device this way, but it's a great way to figure out, like, am I encountering a ground loop?
So you can see here, there's 2 pins or 2 plugs here, but then there's 3 here. So they basically removed that.
So the tab allows you to ground somewhere else.
Up here.
Yeah. But a lot of people don't do that. So it's okay in a lot of situations to just plug this in, remove the ground, and see, does it go away? And you can make your own. I mean, you could take like a cheap extension cord or something and just cut the pin off and see if that fixes your problem. But that's a great tool, a very inexpensive tool to try and figure out, like, is it being caused by X, Y, or Z? I use them a lot in MadVR because we get sometimes ground loops, and I just tell the guys, like, try a cheater plug. Does that fix your issue? If it does, there are ground isolators that you can use, or you can ground using the cheater plug and a copper wire to your rack or something else.
Yeah, Rob said he used a
Iffy. Yeah, they're like $100 on Amazon. They're ground isolators.
And then Scott says, Ryan and I know 60 hertz on very
for like 3 hours while we were in your basement doing other stuff, and all we hear is one of the subs going.
It's so frustrating. Figure out what's going on
whole time.
Yeah, so this is a good thought here. You know, expensive when the house catches on fire.
Yeah,
so
use it for a second to figure out if you can isolate it, and then go back to ground. Don't keep it that way.
Yeah, and sometimes it doesn't get rid of the hum. So
no,
but it's cheap. It's $4, $5,
or make your own. Yeah.
Bobby says, are you guys still bringing the Christie Inspire 4K 860 to MWAVE?
I think so. I think that's the plan.
So there's going to be 2 Christies at the show. 3, okay.
Because the 860, I think there's going to be 2 4Ks in the 860.
Okay, let me stop screen share real quick. Boom. All right. So up here, if you go into brands, so we've got, there's going to be a Christie down here, Absolute Ultimate AV with Grimani system.
Yep.
There's going to be one. Is Kincaid bringing one?
No.
Okay. It was
the other one is in Ascendo. Not that Ascendo room. It's the other one.
Where's the other one? Further down. Oh, down here. Yep.
And then
where's the third one? I haven't.
It would be in the projector comparison by itself.
Okay.
And then technically you have, mine's not there, but it's in the Griffin.
Yeah.
I don't think there'll be a Griffin. I think it's 2 M4Ks.
Right.
I think. I don't technically know what Absolute Ultimate's bringing.
I think, from what I understand, they're bringing the same model that's going to be
in the Ascendo room.
The Ascendo room, but it's going to have a different lens, probably.
Yeah,
like a mod.
So it's an M4K, and that's a really good projector. MWS is the 4K 860 laser. It's a single chip DLP. So it's not the greatest on native contrast. I think it's like 1200 or 1500 native contrast. But it's over 7,000 lumens. So it's pretty good. It doesn't use external lenses. It comes with a built-in lens. I just installed one in a guy's barn dominium on a 300-inch screen. And
nice.
it was pretty cool.
Will they do a high contrast lens for that?
They don't use external lenses for them. It's all built in.
Okay.
So it has its place, right? High output, 7,000 lumens for, I think MSRP is like $12,000, which is pretty good. When we brought this up last time, and this is the last thing we'll talk about, and we'll shut the stream down, is people were like, "Oh, it's only 96% of RG of BT 709," and people were like, "Oh, well, that's not great." But a lot of people don't realize how little a lot of projectors are actually doing. Like JVCs, if you're not using the filters, or I'm not saying they're doing 96% of BT 709. I'm just saying it's a lot less than you think it is, and it's not at 7,000 lumens. So just food for thought. Don't get all caught up on that necessarily. You can still have a phenomenal image. It's all in the use case. So you put this next to a JVC NZ9 or something, yeah, it's going to get destroyed in the native contrast. But the 860 has over double the light output, which means I can easily light up a screen in a barn dominium that's 300 inches wide. So use case. Use case.
Come hang out with us, man. You'll be able to see it in person.
Yep.
And then Lane, appreciate the $1 super chat. I don't think I saw a question.
There wasn't one that I saw.
Okay, just want to make sure. And I think we have one more question, and we'll wrap up tonight. Youthman, with your RS2s, do you do your clothes and hair move like with the ported? So you're not physically going to get the air movement. So like a lot of times with the ported, you're feeling the air come out of the port. But almost every person that comes by my house, they always ask if I have tactile transducers. And I'm on a concrete slab. I'm not on a platform. I'm not on a riser or anything. The front seats are right on the concrete, and there's plenty of tactile in my room for my desires. As far as like, does my hair move? I mean, I've never really tried to see if my hair moved. I don't know. I know I feel it in my body, like my pants legs. I feel it in my body, my chest.
It takes a lot of output to get that.
Yes, I don't know about my hair moving, but
I've done it. I mean, my room will move your pants leg, or used to move your pant legs and stuff.
Yeah.
It's all about pressurization and driver surface area.
I mean, I'm not moving stuff, I don't think. So
does my hair move? Mine was blown away.
That's what's up. He's just prepping for that 50. I mean, he didn't want to lose it, so he's like, get it ready. I think we got
that's
everything.
it.
Yeah.
I like that length.
Yeah.
2 hours.
Like I said, yeah. If we're going to do our best to keep it at this between an hour and a half to 2 hours. 3 hours is a long night. Really, really is. And I know these guys got family. Like everybody's like Jessica, she's asleep, so it doesn't matter to me. I can stay up all night. But we'd love to have you guys come out and hang out with us for MWAVE. If you need some home theater equipment, hit up Ryan. You can reach him at ascendav.net. MWAVE, like I said, man, we're getting really close. We're almost a month out. Super awesome event. We'd love to have you join us out in Kansas City at the convention center. It's going to be fun. Well, guys, hope y'all have an incredible week, and we'll see you in the next stream.
See you guys later.